Good morning. The Building and Facilities Construction Committee meeting of Wednesday, April 16th, 2025 at 10. We are at what, 10:05? 05 will now come to order. And for the convenience of the recorder, we will give our names, and I'll start with Shirley Mazinski, Chair.
Linda Brown.
Carol Gogolinsky.
Fred Fontaine.
Bob Wormy.
And our administrator, Matt Wojcik. Thank you for coming and taking over to give us information. We need to know where we are and what we're doing. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Where are we? Recommendations, number one, to
You
the,
got your RFP for 11 Gleason Court, which I'm working diligently on. It's not ready for distribution for prime time yet, but it's not for lack of effort. So
okay.
I'm
I
doing
understand, because of the
due
timing.
diligence on
Yeah.
the town's records.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of taxpayer money was spent
Yeah,
getting rid of all the lead paint,
Yep.
all the asbestos,
Yep.
all the guano. that
Yep.
was-
Yes,
remember that.
I was.
and a new
Yep.
roof.
So to assert
Yep.
that, the new roof was easy because Gene keeps records.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
unbelievable, right? So I've been able to recreate the asbestos removal kind of hodgepodge. I need to be able to prove this.
Okay, yep.
Because a potential buyer should be, these things should be disclosed to a potential buyer.
Yes.
This is what you're getting. I think that, so we can show that all the floor tiles got taken up, all the ballasts in the old fluorescent lights that had nasties in them are gone as well. So really, all that we have left is some, that, I don't even know what color green that is. Maybe it's Kelly green?
Paint.
The paint that's along the trim and the windowsills and the window trim?
Oh.
I don't think it's Kelly Green.
The porch was
Well, I don't know
green.
what to call it.
I know.
Green.
It's green.
Number 5. All right, stuff you don't eat. It was mostly on the porch,
Yeah.
front and rear. The front and rear porches have been removed, so all that lead paint went away. There was no lead paint found inside the building. And the laboratory that did the testing was really, really thorough. They did like 100 samples. So I think we can basically say, here's the report. We have the hard copy of the report. If you have any doubts about lead paint inside the building, you can knock yourself out and recreate this test. As far as we're concerned, it's all gone.
Question,
That
Matt?
Star Trek battle alarm is my mother calling me.
Have
And you're not taking
have you asked the Adam?
I have the documents, but what I'm saying is the reason
Okay.
why I'm not ready to present the RFP to you is because it's taken me all this
Sure,
time to get it.
understand.
So I think the only place where there's any lead paint is the exterior, and it's on that green. It would have been the same paint that they
Okay.
put on the porch, they put around the windows. So that's, so I think we're pretty close to being able to say the building's much cleaner than it was before it was remediated in 2012.
Yeah.
So I'm still getting the inquiries from the interested parties. So you only meet monthly, so this is my only trouble here, is I want you guys to act first before it goes to the select board for posting. So what I'm thinking of doing, Madam Chair, is finishing it and distributing it to you all via email, if we can do that. And then when we have the next meeting, instead of going over it for the first time, hopefully everybody will have had a chance to look it over, because it's a month. And I might present the highlights of it, but we won't go through it line by line.
Okay.
I've also written the language that captures your minutes from your comments on the historic exterior. And frankly, I had delegated this task and found myself having to do it,
Understand.
so.
Question?
Will the historical commission be able to review this RFP prior?
Yeah, I think we're just trying to do it all at once.
Okay.
Anybody else?
But Rebecca's comments are the basis for
Yes.
what I wrote, so I just really,
Conservation, historical.
Yes.
Yeah.
A couple of things. If you're up against time, I mean, couldn't we just have a little extra meeting at some point instead of having to wait a whole month? I mean, it's not a big deal, it's not,
So not to disappoint you, what I'd like to do is finish it
yeah,
and say, I'm ready for a meeting. I
Right.
don't want you to schedule a meeting
Right,
and
no,
then
but-
my life takes over like it has, like I got everybody from Perry Street
right.
So what
coming to see me.
But we have 3 days, we have to put it up.
Linda knows what
I
I'm talking about.
personally would like to see it before I come to a meeting.
Right, so I think what
Okay.
I
Yeah,
set, like, a soft deadline for myself to get it done by this Friday, circulate it around, and then you can have conversation about scheduling and not violate open meetings.
Yep.
We all know that, right? So setting the time for a meeting is not, you would never set a time for a meeting if you couldn't do this. And then we'll have Jen get it around to you.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
But that's a way to expedite the process, because the select board will meet on May 6th. So that probably too soon. Then they'll meet again on the 20th of May, and that might be a good time. So if this group can meet before the 20th, render a recommendation, select board, that's a Tuesday, I'd be able to put it in the central register. If they vote it, I could put it in the central register that Thursday to appear the following Wednesday, which would be the last Wednesday in May, which means that we could be opening bids and reviewing bids in July. That's the goal. I would like to have had this closed to this fiscal year, but this isn't going to be a moneymaker for us. This is more about moving the asset away
And saving it.
and saving it. It's not about the money.
Well,
We want to get something for it, right? There's no such thing as a free building.
no.
The last time the town sold this, we had a purchase and sales, don't forget, it was like $35,000. We'll name a floor price that not to go below, because we've done some things here to make this useful. We put some more real estate to make the lot compliant. The building's been insured and tightened up, so,
And the land alone, with that extra,
just the real estate alone, yeah.
yeah.
So.
Okay.
But I think at one point, the committee was willing to part with it for $1.
No,
Yeah.
no, not me.
Not this committee. You had a special committee that was set up to sell that.
And I'm, I don't know about you.
That was before 2012, though.
yeah,
Right, so you would have gotten it with all the chemicals and the bird poop.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, how much have we paid to insure it in the last,
It's about $1,200 a year.
yeah, so you get $12,000 or more. So it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to get rid of it, but,
Yeah.
I've been looking over the comments from the master plan committee. And interesting, people are, in my opinion, they're looking at, we have no place for meetings. So, and I know, can't do it probably because,
Do you mean meetings or like a community center?
or a community
Now,
center,
we have
both.
plenty of places to meet, but we just don't have a community
Yes
center.
and no. So that's why, we were supposed to have a walkthrough of upstairs, did we?
Oh, no.
no.
We'd have to have the video follow us and everything,
Yeah.
so that's,
That's something else we
Yeah.
need to do. Okay. You guys got any comments?
Yeah, I do.
Yep. You had your turn, let's make sure they have it. Okay, go ahead, Carol.
Okay, that we've cleaned up a lot of stuff and everything. I don't know if there's still asbestos in the windows because they use it in the putty, but when we say this, we'll give them a report on what we give them, but we're not going to guarantee, right?
So that's the rest of the language.
Right, okay.
The town has, to the best of its knowledge, addressed its issues, but what remains is being transferred as is.
Exactly, okay.
At
Yep,
your own risk,
yep,
do your own research.
right.
You're right, there was often asbestos, but so I think what happened is those windows were installed before asbestos was used as a sealant. And I don't know, so this
Yeah,
is what I
right.
don't know. I don't know if they ever updated those window installations or did some weatherization.
Right.
That's a little bit less involved, though.
Right, right. But so we're not guaranteeing, but we're giving
We
the
can't. I
idea
don't
that
think any responsible
there's a
person
lot of
can.
money that's been spent that you don't have to spend.
Yeah.
Right? Especially, I bet you today, what we spent would be probably twice as much to do the same amount of work now, or 3 times as much.
So I believe I was on the Board of Selectmen at the time the roof and the guano was taken care of, which was awful. And if we left it open, it was going to be even worse.
Oh.
It was terrible. But anyhow, it was done
Good for your garden, bad for wood floor.
and sealed. So, yes. But then there was no money to continue to improve it, or no direction as to where was it, what were we going to use this for? And I vowed I would never vote to empty a building without knowing what it's going to use for.
Why? I'm not
Because-
see what you're getting at.
It sits there.
Oh, okay.
It sits there.
You mean strip the contents of the building?
Yeah.
Right, but,
So, and we're keeping it, and it's sitting there.
So when it comes to school buildings, Madam Chair, I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Yeah.
I probably spent a good part of my municipal career, especially on the economic development side, trying to liquidate old school buildings. Now, in Woonsocket, the elementary school buildings made beautiful condominiums, like crazy, gorgeous, high-end. So the only problem was you're trying to sell high-end condominiums in a poor city, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of the bones of the building and the way the classrooms were laid out, the classrooms were a perfect size for a studio apartment. So all you had to do is plumb it.
yeah,
But the old Woonsocket Middle School, 500,000 square feet.
wow.
Who wants that? Who wants the Westport High School that, in my town, we just abandoned the old high school to move into the new one?
Yeah.
That thing is as big as Douglas. It's about the same size community, same size student body. Can you imagine if Douglas High School tomorrow was empty? What would we do with that thing? Right? And you can't really just leave the gym. The gym doesn't have its own heating plant. I mean, it's tied into the rest of the building. So it gets to be a really big issue. That grammar school, it's been vacant for a long time. Right, so where did you move? You moved the kids over to the primary school, right? Up on the hill?
Bob Wormy
Yeah.
closed. When did they
Yeah.
I don't know when they moved them.
close it?
I just remember being there for 6 years
Must have been.
with all the
And
lead
it
paint.
was
and
used,
You're still here, see that?
it was used for
We're gonna use
Halloween.
it
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
prop
yeah,
at the
That's
RFP.
a destructive use.
Yeah, yeah.
See that?
Yeah. Okay, so to move things along,
So
we'll
if-
wait for your RFP,
Yeah.
and,
I'm really pretty much done. I just want council to review it
Yes.
for the procurement
Understand.
aspect of it, make sure
Right.
it's compliant.
and then, once you're ready with that, actually, do you think we can maybe set a meeting
That's what we'll do.
right now?
No, I wouldn't.
No?
No, give me a chance to finish, because like I say, I don't.
All right.
So if I send it to Rich Bowen and all of a sudden Rich doesn't feel well and I don't hear from the guy for
Sure.
10 days, you've set a meeting.
Yeah,
And I'm not
gotcha.
ready to give you what you need to have your
Okay.
meeting.
Everybody good with
Yeah,
that?
because what do we post, 3 days ahead is all we have
Yeah,
to do?
48 hours.
48 hours, okay, so,
Yeah.
I think most of us,
As long as it's before May 20th, right? Is it?
So I think we want to do this within a couple of weeks.
yeah.
Yes,
It could be,
but,
so I guess what I mentioned May 20th is, if this board were able to make a recommendation to the select board before May 20th, you could even do it May 19th.
Yeah,
Right.
I would be able, well, we wouldn't be able to do it May 19th because I have to post it, right? But
Yeah.
the week before, we
Right.
would be able to get the select board to review the RFP, and then I could, as soon as they authorize me to post it, it's off and run, it's off to the races, because it'll be ready.
The only thing I don't want, because we've all got busy lives, and I just don't want, all of a sudden, it's too difficult to get this board together.
Understood.
Can we
Okay?
keep the meeting date a Wednesday at 10 o'clock? Because I have other meetings I
Yes.
do, and so,
Well, I mean,
but
You
any
mean the
any
extra
any
meeting?
Wednesday before the 20th, right?
I can usually change my schedule.
Yeah, I
So
have
that
other
gives
meetings
us
here.
the 7th and the 14th of May.
Most of
You could pencil in if you want to.
okay.
And I guess
That's
10
that's a
o'clock
good
is
idea.
usually good.
Yeah, that's a good idea if it's good with everybody else. Question of a meeting, say an extra one at May 7th?
He doesn't want, he
Yeah.
doesn't want to get it.
Well, question. It's just there, so kind of keep it open.
Is that
Yeah.
a Wednesday?
Yes.
Well, I think we're tying him down, though. I think, I don't know, how
I'm going
bad
to
is
shoot
it?
for that.
I'm flexible.
I
You're
would-
flexible,
I would
I'm
slip to the
flexible.
14th.
You're
if I get it
flexible?
Back from council.
Okay.
We need a quorum.
Okay, so we'll just pencil in 2 consecutive
Right,
Wednesdays.
but we can change it to something else.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yep, okay.
If we have somebody.
Everybody
make a
good?
quorum with, if Linda can't make it.
Right.
Heaven forbid.
Hey,
Quorum shopping. Not that anybody's ever done that.
All
well,
set.
yeah, she's not the only one. You, Fred's busy, all of a sudden he's gone, and we need him.
Wow, disappearing Fred.
Yes, all right,
Whisking off for foodie tours of.
okay. Highway,
Tornado
next
party.
item on the agenda is highway building project. Can you update us on what that is, Matt?
Carol's asked for this a million times, and I said, I am not going into that meeting without this. So I've learned my lesson about passing things out at meetings.
Yeah.
If you want to confuse a group of people, hand a stack of paper. I am going to walk around and give you each
Okay.
the exact copy
Thank
of the
you.
exact material that I want to talk about.
And we each get 2?
Is there 2?
Oh, man.
Yep,
See,
there
this is
is,
what I
2
need.
different ones. Yep, got it.
You have a picture and a spreadsheet.
Okay,
The picture ties back to the spreadsheet. So the numbers of the slots,
oh boy.
I know it's small font.
Okay, that's good.
Wow, I guess.
But there's correspondence between the numbers and the slots. I'm looking for my favorite piece of equipment. Where is it? The grader is number 16.
16? Yep.
So in doing this layout, the architect used the dimensions of the grader to place item 16 on the top row. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parking spots over. You see number 16?
Yeah,
So this is what we've been working off of for the estimate of the size of the operative part of the building. So there's no, you don't see any office space or
No.
anything else here. This is just to park the equipment with the notion that this barn would have 2 garage doors, one on either end of the center aisle. So you see those dotted lines and those triangles? Those
Yeah.
are your garage doors.
yeah,
So that equipment could be pulled all the way through. That center aisle also becomes storage if you increase the size of your fleet in the future. Because basically, this is maxed out. So if you add equipment to the highway fleet, it's got nowhere to go except the center aisle. So in terms of being cost efficient, that's how the architect arrived at this plan. So there's, you got your measurements, and then you also, in terms of the building height, you're trying to accommodate your tallest piece of equipment with its radio, if it has a radio whip on top, which would probably be the front-end loader, because the front-end loader has a radio in it. So it's going to be 10 feet plus the size of the whip. So that's how we ended up with the specs of the building, width, length, and height,
So what's the height you're going to?
20.
20? Well, what size doors you going to have on it?
So those, there's no elevation on here? These are 30-foot doors? No, they're not 30-foot
No, they're
openings.
not 30-foot doors.
The center aisle is 30 feet wide. The building's 100 by 190. It doesn't say there's a scale. Oh, 1/16 of an inch equals a foot. Obviously, the
They
one thing
usually put 14-foot overhead doors.
I would feel confident saying is, we don't want custom doors. We're going to go with a
Yeah, so
standard
they're
door.
usually
with
14-foot doors.
14 foot.
But you're going with 20-foot ceilings. I had, my first building had 16-foot ceilings. And the next buildings that I did, I went with 20-foot ceilings, only because I could put mezzanines.
So this building
And-
will have a mezzanine because it will have a crane, your standard, like, double rail pulley crane to pick up the sander bodies and put them in the dump trucks. What we're doing right now, OSHA would not be happy with. We used to do this on the farm. If you pick up a really heavy thing with a front-end loader
Yeah,
with
right.
a chain, the most important job is the guy who checks the chain. This is usually the guy who's going to be underneath the heavy thing, because you're motivated to check that chain, make sure that chain doesn't pop, and listen for it. But that's not okay with our friends at OSHA, for obvious reasons. So what we're doing now, and by way of comments I made in other meetings, the reason why we have to reset this project is we're finishing the due diligence on we'll refer to it as the Olson properties behind the pond.
Okay.
And part of the problem here is that the current owner has not followed up on previous dam reports. So when you get a new dam inspector, the first thing they look at, and they say, well, that report is not 10 years old like it's supposed to be, it's 15 years old. And DCR has sent you a bunch of warnings about having to address the conditions that were noted in a report that's now 15 years old. So I don't think it's wise to be optimistic about the outcome of the dam inspection. So where does this leave us in terms of a real estate negotiation? Not to pull any punches, this is business, right? And I didn't cut my teeth in government, I cut my teeth in business. I'm going to have the appraiser get a copy of the dam inspection report and say, what decrement are you going to take from your appraised value? And reapproach the owner and say, I'm sorry, but the previously discussed price is not going to hold based on the cost of addressing that one issue. So, like I say, I'm not optimistic. I think that's going to mean deals off.
So would the dam have to be removed? And then you,
And we have more land.
what's that? Well, actually, the problem with that is now it turns
Now
into a
it's-
perennial stream.
It's a river.
It's a river, so you end up with less. You think you're going to get more, but
It's a
you end
math
up with
problem.
less.
How much do you gain
Right.
versus how much do you lose
Right.
from the new riverbank?
So you're going to lose more than what you gain.
You could.
I think we have to make sure she gets, if she
So
wants the
I'm
deal.
not, I think it's premature to pull the pin and say this thing is completely dead.
We need that
That's right.
report.
Yeah.
But that report is already in progress, right? So we've gotten our first progress payment. So Selectman Fitzpatrick and I met the guy out there, and then the real estate agent also met with the engineer, the real estate agent. He's a certified wetlands scientist, former planning board chair. So it's not like she doesn't understand what she's being told by the engineer, I would think. And I think that, it's come to Jesus time over that issue. So what I'm doing is I'm exploring properties where this building might fit.
That are available.
That we could make available by being nice.
So nothing we own, nothing we own?
So the stuff we own, looks, I'll recirculate the feasibility study to this committee and you can review it. It was done 3 years ago, the findings will stand as to the properties that were assigned by the select board. So I don't want to recreate all of history here and reinvent the wheel.
Right.
The select board voted, directed me, Mike Fitzpatrick, and Adam Furno to collectively engage with Weston and Sampson on existing town properties that met the description, so they were in the center of town. That is where the highway super wanted to put the building. So we looked at
Yep.
the Buff-Terrian Memorial Dump. We looked at the Buckeye property. We looked at the existing site. Why do I feel like we had one that didn't even make it off the giggle test?
The water.
So, no, that's Buckeye.
Okay, all right.
So I think the focus was on those two, and you have a lot of the same problems replicated on those properties.
Yep,
The big issue with Buckeye is that it was purchased for wellhead protection.
yeah.
So the notion of, well, we bought it, thank you very much, we got our wellhead protection, we used wellhead protection money on the water side to accomplish this,
Yeah.
now we're just going to dig it up. And by the way, so you don't have to walk very far. I kind of like that piece of property, it's kind of nice back there. But we had our community garden during COVID out there, and I spent my time out there, my free time, growing vegetables for Douglas residents. You walk to the edge of the fence, and then maybe another 100 feet beyond the edge of the fence, and you're in wetland hell. It's the same piece of, it's the same body of water, it's Riddlebrook.
Right, right.
I used to trap muskrat as a kid, and that terrain back there is a muskrat trapper's dream, because the stream bed is deep, well-defined, and not very wide. So the muskrat have nowhere to go.
Can't trap anymore, though.
Hey,
If we could, we wouldn't have all these problems with the beavers.
but so I just basically thought that by the time you dealt with the grade, you would not have very much usable property left there. The biggest issue with Buckeye is you will have to tear down those buildings. You have to anyway,
Yeah.
but that, you have to factor that into the cost. We believe there is a portion of that property that should not be disturbed, because the fire department used to use it for practice. Read between the lines, you know what I'm talking about. So we don't want to disturb a good portion of that property near the street. And then you have this rather clumsy setup where the driveway to that back of that property was between two residences, townies, people who have lived in Douglas forever, would now have highway, especially during a snowstorm, driving by them all day. That just seemed to be suboptimal. There's too many negatives. The biggest positive was three-phase power goes, so the pipeline was a huge power user. So you have three-phase power that goes all the way to a transformer that still hums like a hive full of bees, because there's no load sitting next to that little brick building that's there. The brick building, the roof is dead, so now there's all mold penetration into the building. It's actually toxic, like bad mold. So that was why that property didn't get picked. I'm only half cursing Buff-Terrian. He did a wetlands crossing by taking a slab of concrete and tipping it over on its side, so that's how cars are going over that. And then when you go in the back, he scraped the ground to save money, so he used the sand from what he dug out of back there to sand the roads during a snowstorm. and then backfilled that with whatever he had. So stumps and, wood chips and other grindings. It's not a terrible use of, the town was what, 2,500 people, 3,000? It's not
Yep.
the end of the world for him to have done that.
Right.
But as a building site, I think as you all know, we would have to scrape all that off to get to virgin soil before we could even think about what we're going to build. A lot of people don't realize this because they don't think about the geography, but there is another wellhead protection zone immediately behind that lot. That when you draw the circle, it cuts off a big portion of that lot is in the don't touch buffer zone. So by the time you do the setback from the wetland, deal with the crossing, scrape off all the garbage to get to virgin soil, now you're talking about a very expensive project. I teased one of the selectmen last night who is very involved with soccer. Half teasing, I said, that soccer field would be a great place for it.
No, it wouldn't.
I said, that's actually true, and if I were a ham-handed jerk face,
Yeah.
I would pursue that more.
Is that
But-
the one that's behind the old school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The vehicle.
But if you do that, you would have to replace the soccer field for the kids who play soccer.
But wasn't that a
Soccer's
school
really
at one
popular.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd end up with the same problem.
Right.
Looking for a flat piece of ground with parking and water and all the rest that a soccer field needs. So it's actually kind of it's not a funny idea, it's actually a dumb idea. So we're not going there. It was fun to tease him. So that's why those properties were eliminated. The existing footprint could be useful if it were married with something else. And that's one angle to pursue. The old snow palace, that's how we refer to it, the old snow palace, where the town used to dump all the snow, behind the high school,
Yeah.
to my mind, is not the end of the world because of, I'm not overly persuaded that being near the schools on Davis Street is a bad place for a highway barn, until you go walk in those woods. So Mike Fitzpatrick said, I'm not a mountain goat. Bob Manerick said, I'm not a mountain goat. So if you actually go back there, it looks like some tailings from the, either the wastewater plant, water plant construction were kind of bermed around, and the school buses used to park there, and then we would dump the snow there. Once you get over that berm, it gets stupid really
When you
fast.
say you're not a mountain goat,
The grade goes like this,
what's in it?
rocks.
Yeah,
Because there was a
Gravel?
sand pit there.
yeah.
No,
No, not,
rocks.
Because there's even a value for them now.
well,
So if they meet the test, right?
Right,
We
they
could have
crush 'em
certain
up.
people go in there, crush them up, make a lot of money on it.
Yeah. Because they can't find gravel anymore.
Because you can't find gravel anymore, but
Right.
just the combination of the ledge,
Yeah.
the glacial remnants, and the pitch is just, it's kind of prohibitive. And you have to do a wetlands crossing, because along Davis Street, there's actually a pretty substantial, it's not quite as big as the pond over on Riddlebrook, but it's pretty big, and it's very deep. You know how I know this? Because I'm a country boy. I take a big rock, I throw it really high, and by the sound of the splash it makes, I know how deep the water is, right? Right, Bob? If it goes kaboom,
Yeah.
it's really deep. The splash, it's really shallow. It's totally unscientific, but it's a known wetland. It is wet all year round. It would probably be deemed, because it's running, a perennial stream, and would lose a lot of space. So at the end of the day, it's not easy. But we will
continue.
basically keep bringing it to this committee. So we're going to use this committee as the vehicle for public discussion about where we're going. So I think that's a good plan, because it is your charge under the bylaw. But right now, this is the marker in the sand that we have, because the insurance exercise has been valuable for us because we established the value of all this.
Yeah,
And it's millions of dollars. So we have an obligation to our employees. We also have an obligation to the taxpayer to take care of all this stuff and make sure it lives out its useful life. Not to sound like an alarmist, but it's getting really hard to get this stuff
Yes.
because policymakers want us to make all this stuff electric and are closing down our opportunities to buy diesel. So we want this stuff to last forever. We want to take care of it. First thing you're going to learn if you come work for the highway department is here's your grease gun. I'm going to show you how to use it. And on the other stuff, because as supply becomes constrained on these items, they're going to be more and more expensive. When I started working for the town of Douglas, we bought a highway plow that year because one of them died, and it was $183,000 fully fit out with the plow.
Yeah.
And we're waiting for one that cost us $283,000, with the prices going towards $300,000. We bought an ambulance my first year here for $214,000. We just got a quote for the exact same chassis in the exact same box for $380,000. So I'm not making this stuff up. These
No.
are actual quotes on contracts. And we just got to take care of it. We've got to make sure it's all working. And my favorite piece of equipment, the grader, which never loses its value, that thing, it's old, it's got lots of hours on it, and if you actually do research on the internet
Yeah.
and find that unit with that age and that number of hours on it,
Right.
$600,000.
I got a grader.
You got a grader?
I do
You
have
have
a
a
grader.
retirement nest egg then.
I have a grader. Trees are starting to grow up through it, but I have one.
Well, take care of it.
We'll get Klinger and Radar to find all the parts for you, and
gotta
we'll
find
get it to run again.
I got to find some old guy that knows how to run it. Actually, that would be my brother.
I was going to say, there's a lot of hot necks around. You might want to ask for
Oh,
another.
yeah. I know
Right.
everything.
So, question,
Yeah. So
Fred.
there is a chance that the dam might be okay.
No.
No,
So
You knew that.
I know.
Okay.
They could have saved the name.
No, you have to document.
I think we all knew it, but you
Yes.
had to have an engineer
Have
with
to.
the fancy degree and the stamp to say it. But if you have an earthen dam and you can't really estimate the age of a tree that's growing next to water because it may have grown rapidly, but it's a good couple of stumps in there are 12 inches wide. You know, it's not working.
And it can't be made right with
So if
X
you
amount
cut
of
those
dollars.
trees down, then the roots will rot and then you'll lose the integrity of the dam.
You mean
it's a
to make
nasty-
another dam?
Yeah, that
Or to
would,
make, is it possible to assign a number to making it right? Or
They'll do that exercise for us, but without a grant. And so here's let me, full disclosure on what it would, so if the town bought the land, so you need site control over the dam, you need to actually own it to work on it.
Yeah.
And then we applied for a grant. The grant is not automatic, it's competitive. So if you had some of these problems on the Whiten Reservoir Dam, you'd win a grant like that, because it's considered a high-hazard dam. This thing is not. The worst thing that could happen is it's just going to flood out the wetland for a couple of hours, and then it's, because it's a bullet of water. But the flow into that body of water isn't very fast. So once you settle the pond out, your flow going through that is going to be what it is. So what you see going through the culvert now is what's going to end up going through the culvert after the pond drains.
So why don't we just bust the dam?
Well, there could be an accident, but, you know, I don't know if the landowner would appreciate that.
yeah, I don't think DEP would appreciate that either,
You know,
And you know,
especially when we've already said.
The let,
Go ahead.
and you know it would be so much money that it wouldn't be worth buying it, knowing that we have to.
we don't know that, right? So
Right, so
that's why you
still-
got to get the dam report.
Okay. So,
I'm
and you're
just saying that-
actively looking at others, you're right now looking at actively looking at other, so you might have a plan B in your back pocket. I'm just thinking negotiations with the landowner, then I'd say, they need it. You know?
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that. So
You're going to have a plan B.
I
in
pride
your pocket.
myself in the fact that this is the one thing I think I learned in life is I went to school for it and learned it,
Yeah.
is to negotiate. You need leverage. So I will not go into that conversation with the current landowner without a plan B,
That's my question.
because I'm not going to be put in that position
Yeah.
on behalf of the town. Just won't do that.
Smart.
I think to a previous comments that, Madam Chairman, that one of your members has made, I just pointed at, if you could manage the water and the crossing in the same conversation, and you got a grant for it, what would it cost?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Right.
And you don't know that you could win that competition.
That would be. the
You
hard
might
part.
get points
Yeah.
because you're a municipality trying
Yeah.
to build a building. But then I think it really comes down to return on investment. How much do you want to put into the property, knowing that it could be more expensive to develop than the Plan B you're being forced to consider because it's not ideal, but still might be a whole lot less expensive, right? I look at this and I see a kit, right? I'm not real excited about custom building this. That's silliness. So the real expense of this project comes from running the water and running crossings, if where you need the crossings. So you might lose some functionality. You're not going to lose the size. You might lose some functionality, but you might gain so much more in money that it makes it worth it.
Any grants would be from the state.
Yeah, and so you've got one entity in town right now that's applying for a dam removal grant. We'll see how they do. And it's a really weird, because private dams really aren't eligible. The dam's on the Mumford, it's over behind the landing. And the town's taking a neutral position on that. We don't support it, we're not opposed to it. There are residents at the landing that really like their little pond. They don't want it to go away, but the dam is in very poor condition over there. So it should be removed. So we'll see. We'll kind of see how they manage. It's all the same watershed. So it might be a level of interest from the state to have the Mumford River completely cleaned up of all these little dams until it gets to Gilboa Street. I don't know. I don't like to make plans based on competitive grants.
Do they have an idea what it's going to cost them to take that dam down?
No, that's what they're working on right now.
Oh, okay.
Have a comment
Yeah,
about
sure,
the
Linda.
dam and the pond itself, that we don't own it all. There's another party involved with the ownership of the pond.
Of the pond, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they may be
Right.
opposed to reaching the dam.
Okay.
Which may put another kink in the works, so. you know.
The one thing I want to hold out there as a possibility, because I don't want to have anybody say I never said this, so I'm going to say it. We still want to have a conversation with the current owner of that property back there, because they have an easement across town land that they don't need. So, in terms of the long-term interest of the town, the fact that the Olson property has two ways to get out, one goes to Rydell, the other one goes to Maine. If they don't use Maine, it would, and we could gradually start to extinguish that easement, we would be able to unify our fire station property with our highway barn property and be able to utilize the whole thing and not have poles in the way and a whole bunch of other issues. That's all I'm going to say about it, because I haven't even begun to have that conversation with Olson or anybody else about it. It's just food for thought. You lose a certain amount of functionality in that property because you share that driveway with people who need it to be open to get to their property in the back.
Right. Now, do they actually, is that the road they use to get to that house? I didn't notice anything going out to Rydell when we were there that was
That's correct.
used.
So their access to Rydell right now is a paper.
Paper, right, it's not built, okay.
Isn't it
okay.
actually that Rydell Road address?
It is.
Yeah, but it's, then the other thing too is there are several other right-of-ways there as well as Olson, right?
So this is really complicated.
Yeah,
So I will tell you what I know, but I'm not going to say that it's definitive.
Yeah.
I think Selectman Stevens has done a lot of research on this issue. Buxton actually owns property all the way from their home to Rydell Road. It's not a right-of-way, it's property. They own a strip of land that
Right,
goes all the
right.
way out. So there's no need, that property doesn't have any interest in the easement from me. There is no rider there. So then the next issue is does Tebow? Now, what we found is that Tebow has, I think it's an easement over the Buxton piece, or maybe it's an easement over the Tessino piece. But I don't think the town's land is burdened by an easement to get to Tebow. I think it's only Olson. The other property owner with an interest, and I've tried to find it, I'm not a title attorney, so this isn't my thing. I go through it real quick, through the
Right.
registry of deeds. If I don't see anything, I get somebody else to do the work.
Right, right.
I think Chesbro has one of those old-fashioned easements where it wasn't defined by a specific meets and bounds around a specific lane. It's simply the right to pass and repass to take wood or to graze cattle, or both, on the lots around it. Now, the only thing I've heard from that party is that they'd want, as long as they can get to their woodlot,
Yeah.
they'd be satisfied. But nothing has been in writing. It's just a conversation. Somebody had related to me hearsay. It makes sense to me.
I think at one point, wasn't a number of years ago, not a whole lot of years ago, but a number of years ago, there was a court case that came down that if you provided them with another easement, you could extinguish, you could move the easement. Were you aware of that?
That's actually old law. The question is that good law in Massachusetts?
But it actually came up in a court case within, because time goes by so fast. Thing I think was 2 years ago, was 10 years ago. But there was something, there was actually a case law that came up on it.
We can research that, but I mean,
Not too many years ago.
yeah, in terms of what we might want to talk to Olson about is something similar
Yeah.
to that, which is, if we open up
You'd probably have to build the road.
the road to Rydell
Yeah.
for you, would you
Yeah.
do away with this?
Right.
Or take money? Well, no, either way.
Yeah.
So a lot of balls in the air on this, but I'm going to remain firm that unless and until somebody at the select board tells me not to use this drawing, I'm going to use the drawing, because that's what they
Yep.
basically told me.
Okay.
So I have another question on the
Yes.
drawing. So this will just house our existing equipment with no room for expansion?
Let's see how many, there might be here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you have 8 large plows budgeted. I think we run 6.
Yeah.
So you might have room for 2.
Oh, so this equipment is not all we have? This
It's not every last item, no.
This
but
is in
most of it is.
addition to?
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
But if you go through this, we can go
Okay.
through this with Adam at a meeting. You're going to find a check mark next to almost all of this stuff.
Yep.
I think the only place where they left room was plows.
And it says on the right column of the written plan, indoor equipment, and then canopy equipment. What's canopy?
So this row here,
Oh, I thought that was the outdoor. I see.
no. So this is the building
Yep,
with 4 walls and a roof. This is basically this little long rectangle. is a,
Okay.
Lean-to?
Lean-to,
yep.
with the roof on it.
Yep.
That can be broken off from this structure and built as a freestanding structure somewhere else, which is what we'd have to do if we use the existing site. This won't fit anywhere.
And then outdoor would be somewhere else on the property for that equipment. A bunch of sander bodies and a sander repair trailer.
Large sander bodies, there's several of those, and a sander repair trailer.
Those would be stored outside.
Yeah,
Somewhere
So
else.
if you,
yeah,
just look at the numbers.
yeah.
So 46 large sander body is marked as outside.
Yep.
but it's shown in the picture as under the
it?
canopy.
46?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, so outdoor is,
Covered.
huh,
Yeah.
so it's,
I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that he flipped it. What he's got marked as outdoor is actually going under the canopy, and what he's marked as canopy is something we would leave outside.
Yeah.
So your large plow, 32? It doesn't make any sense.
I think
One,
he's
Actually, 'cause
showing
he's
in
got
front of the
32 as front of the truck,
He's showing it in front
number
of the-
5.
he needs to reevaluate.
I'll clarify that.
He's-
I-
he's
I
showing
just think
them in
these
front of
columns
trucks.
Yeah.
are, everything,
Right.
this is really the coin of the realm, because it's
Yeah.
showing all of this either under a roof or under a canopy,
Yes.
which is the goal.
Yep.
I think right now, we
So
store a
this-
lot of this stuff outside.
this paper needs to be revised.
We'll revise.
It's incorrect, okay.
Yep.
Could I
Yes.
ask a question? When I was watching TV the other night, you talked about setting up a committee to go on this.
This one.
But don't you think you ought to get some people in here who know a little more than we do?
I think myself, well, go ahead.
I thought about that, but you know, I think what you'd be creating then is some real tension between
Yeah.
a committee formed by a bylaw of the town to consider these issues
Right.
with yet another stakeholder committee. So with stormwater, it made sense because you had something that was
Yeah.
pulling from everybody, pulling from conservation, pulling from planning, highway, you had a lot of considerations. And you didn't have any one of your sitting committees in town specifically set up for stormwater. Whereas this bylaw that creates this committee is specifically charges the Building Facilities Committee with these decisions, especially at the design phase.
Yeah.
Now, do we have vacancies on this?
We have maybe one.
You have one vacancy on this.
Really?
committee.
No, Ray,
No, we're a 7-person board.
Okay.
And we're 1, 2,
If Ray
3,
were here,
4,
you'd have
5,
six.
6. Oh, so we have
yeah,
one.
we,
You have a
I think we
vacancy?
have one
Or
more.
maybe-
I think
yeah.
you have one, and I think it's actually the school committee's designee. And at
Oh,
one
yeah.
point,
That was Ray, because
So
I was the, school.
you were,
Yeah, and they weren't moving.
so maybe it's the moderator's seat. This is a funky committee, because it's kind of a blend.
I was supposed to be
the
appointed by the
moderator?
moderator, and then they changed it to selectmen.
So we were trying to do that so that we could get enough people,
Yeah.
so this,
Yeah.
because at one point, we didn't have enough people to meet.
Right.
And I think
I'm the
Mr.
moderator.
Holland,
You're the moderator. Yeah.
Mr. Holland was
Appointee.
probably the last person to leave this committee.
Yes.
Sean and Mike Fitzpatrick left this
Yeah.
committee, so then it
That was Virginia
reshuffled.
Howe, she was on.
Virginia Howe, yes.
And that might be the issue. We might never have, she
She-
did resign,
She did.
Yeah.
but we left it open for quite a long time.
We couldn't get people.
Yeah. So I
Finally, the
think
school,
you can get one more person to sit on this committee.
yeah.
Parliamentarily, under the rules of parliamentary procedure, you could form a subcommittee of this committee and take people from outside and get a report from them. I'm just telling you
Yeah.
what the options are. I don't know. You also have the authority to ask people to appear in front of you and offer their opinions, or to have a public hearing
Yeah.
and gain public conversation.
But again, I think we need to have more firm reason. This has been going on for 3 years
War.
or more. And we need to get, now that it's harder and harder to get money because grants are getting pulled back. And anyhow, I think we need to get more information to finish, or at least come up with, okay, where are we going here? But this is me.
Well, that's why we hired Weston and Sampson,
Yeah.
but they wanted the Taj Mahal,
Yeah.
so.
Well, yes, right, so managing Weston and Sampson has been a challenge.
Yes.
And I think we've gotten them to the point where we need them to be. That doesn't mean that I don't trust vendors anyway. It's not a reflection on the individual personalities. They're consummate professionals, they hit deadlines, they do what they're told, and they do a nice job, all right? They clean it up nice. At the end of the day, their interests don't align with ours. They're compensated frequently as a percentage of the size of the building. And you'll hear me fault my municipal colleagues many times, and I'm not going to be shy about it. Stop giving in to the inflation on these buildings. We built a police station in Westport with gables and a cupola and a shelter for the cruisers for $9.3 million. That represented $2.3 million cost overrun. If we try to go out to bid now for a police station, it's $30 million no matter where you go. Why? We're not doing anything different. I almost want to grab everybody and go for a tour of anything. Cumberland, Rhode Island Police Station, Westport Police Station, built 8 or 9 years ago. We passed an override in Westport to do this. And not an override, debt exclusion. Nothing's different. Everything is exactly the same. The booking room has to meet code. The holding cells have to meet code. It's a specialty building. Yes, it's more expensive than programming space in a town hall. It is. But to have this crazy cost inflation, and public works barns are the biggest violator of common sense rules. Because as Ms. Gogolinsky knows, and many members of this committee know, and Mike Fitzpatrick, our selectman, knows, these are kit buildings. You can go on a national contract or even a statewide contract and buy this bloody thing and hire labor out of the South, pay them prevailing wage, but this is what they do. They travel around the country and they build stuff. They'd be here for a week, right? Bang it out, and it's not anywhere near the cost estimate they've given us. So what we've been doing is hammering down this design because there was more to this, right? It included a piece in front that was office space and locker rooms and meeting space. That's where the house came in. So the appeal of the Olson property was, I'm not going to build all that garbage, I'm going to reduce the cost of the building by saying I'm going to repurpose an existing building, which can only partially be done, can't be completely done. As long as we had ADA access on the first floor and we did storage on the second floor, we would have been fine. But you see where we're going. The project has evolved to try to find ways to reduce their programming because they got so silly with the costs on a per square foot basis.
Well, weren't they even saying that we had to have locker rooms and men and women's locker rooms and then places for people to sleep and,
So, I don't know about the sleep part.
yeah.
The locker room part, by code, I think you will have to have a certain number of bathrooms that could all be unisex
Right.
bathrooms, shared bathrooms. And you would meet the requirements of the code. Sprinkling is another issue.
Yeah.
Right, so this footprint triggers the sprinkler requirement. We all, I think, have been brainwashed into thinking that our mission in life is to avoid sprinkling a building. Okay, it does get silly. After a point, it gets silly. I filed a major appeal on a fire marshal's order that I install a sprinkler in the walk-in chiller unit at the Senior Citizen Center in Woonsocket. I said, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. If we get to the point where we have a fire inside the refrigerator, we have much bigger problems than sprinkling. And not only that, but the whole purpose of that appliance was to keep food cold. Now you want me to penetrate it through the ceiling to put in a sprinkler. What's going to start a fire? Oh, well, that could spontaneously combust if the food were to rot. So I'm feeding seniors, I'm not letting the food rot. So it gets dumb. But, all right, let's think about this practically. You may not be storing fuel inside the building, but you're going to be storing any number of chemicals, maybe a few cans of pesticide you can spray the bugs with. You're going to have fuel tanks. They might drip on the floor. It's just not wise to have millions of dollars of equipment sitting in a space that by code is supposed to be sprinkled and think you're not going to sprinkle it. There's some hills to die on. That's not a good one. The hill we want to die on is making sure every single square foot of space that the taxpayer is asked to fund has some practical purpose that directly ties to the mission of the highway department. It isn't something extra that we think we'd like to have. We just don't have that luxury. I like to use the image of a Sherman tank because in World War II, the United States Army commissioned an ugly little fat tank that was kind of slow and it had a marginal gun, but it was armored, so it could take a beating. And we won the war with it. The German tanks were far superior to ours. They were faster, their gun was more accurate, but we beat them because we just had the little plug-along Sherman tanks. In Douglas, we buy Sherman tanks. We want something that's going to last for a long time, take a beating, and get the job done. It doesn't need to have anything special.
Plus, we could keep making them. No
We
matter
can
how
keep
many we
making them.
blew up, we threw up more, and they couldn't keep up with us.
Exactly. So we want to do this once, we want to do it right. Just don't lose sight of the fact your existing highway barn has lasted you almost 100 years,
Yeah, unfortunately.
right?
Yeah.
So think about it. The taxpayer got a lot of value out of the building. If it's time to reinitiate the conversation after 100 years, it's really not a bad time to have the conversation. This building will turn 100 years old. I'm trying desperately to segue to another agenda item. On Veterans Day of this year,
All
this
right.
building will be 100 years since the cornerstone of this building was laid, and then the first classes were held here in December of 1926.
Right.
So we have a whole year to celebrate this building lasting another 100 years, because we're going to take care of it, including a police station being here. So if you think about all the ways you're saving money as a community, you're not building a police station, you haven't built the highway barn in 100 years, your fire station is going to last you because it's in the right spot with the right configuration. You're getting away for pretty good money compared to what my community built: a new fire station, new police station.
I hear you.
The town hall is falling apart, so we need a new one of those. And our school that we just finished was $98 million. And the old school is sitting vacant with no use. So it could be far worse, guys.
Yeah.
Because the problem that we've got is the people in this town have to vote for it.
Yeah.
And they're not in the mood to be spending money, especially now that they've looked at their 401Ks and everything else. And so there's the other thing. Just the fact that we sit there and we say we need it doesn't mean they're going to vote for it. It's going to be a real uphill battle to get this thing through.
So I think the finance plan for this, so I know there's angst over delays, Madam Chair, but it may be a blessing in disguise, because the offset for the taxpayer is having more economic development that lowers the real estate rate so that the excluded debt, you don't see a whole lot of change in your taxes, but you're getting a lot more for it.
Well, that's the thing that I've heard, that, we're getting all this development in. We haven't been affected by it yet because the trucks aren't rolling yet. They will be rolling, people will be affected, but if their taxes are going down, well, then that won't be so bad. But if they see their taxes continuing to go up, they're not going to be too happy.
So I hate to be the prophet of doom,
Yeah.
but if you can find me more than 3 communities that have been able to actually lower, not the tax rate goes up and down all the time.
Right.
Somebody's effective tax bill.
Yeah, right.
I guess we could all retire if we found 3 communities that, so our goal is not to get them down, because
Right.
it's just really hard to do. It's to level them off and keep them steady at a livable rate for people, while everybody else is running around with their heads cut off
Yeah.
with 3% COLAs and all this other stuff that we can't afford over the long a long haul. So fiscal management in a community like this is about getting all your expenses to line up with really slow rates of increase so that your tax rate does go up, but it goes up at a rate that people can absorb.
Right, well, you think they can absorb it, but maybe they decide they don't want to.
Everybody's going to say they can't.
Right.
It's just a matter of
And then it's
public management,
how they're
right?
gonna vote.
Get to that.
You're all
Right.
set?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bob, do you have any questions? Linda, you're good?
No, okay, I'm set.
It's never a good time for a project. So
So,
to strike the last word, it's like a doctor going on vacation. There's never a good time.
what I just
We
want to
could blow through the rest of this quick.
make sure you're okay with is just to keep getting information and knowing where we're at with these two projects, the old grammar school, and moving forward to get the final information on the highway building project. Okay. Keep us informed. All right,
So
thank,
now, in the spirit of the moderator,
yeah.
Keith Menard, you could dispose of all of the remaining items on the agenda by unifying them under the idea that there's no update on any of them.
I have a question, and I'm sure maybe somebody else
Because you've
does.
been here for an hour.
Yeah, on two
Really
items.
important topics, but there
Very.
isn't anything to offer you. I will update you on G,
I do have, wait a minute,
because I did,
Green
there is,
Communities, there was something regarding a $100,000 grant, school out in July.
yes, the middle school
Yeah.
LED retrofit will occur.
We're okay on that. My big concern over the years, after the town meeting, and that's all I'll say, is an RFQ, and you explained last meeting regarding the municipal fire alarm. Been going on too long, but I know we can't do it all at once. So you're moving forward with that.
Yes.
In,
That will be a designer contract. It will originate and here,
yep,
and you will send finalists to the select board for selection.
yep.
And that will be done after Depot Street, so that we can
We could,
sprinkle everything,
so we're going to go through the capital process for this.
Yeah.
So,
and then the fire alarm can be done in conjunction
With-
after the Depot Street.
Yes.
So you're looking at 2026.
Yeah, okay. And Depot Street, final date to begin?
Right after school goes out, June 17th was the date I was given.
Okay,
It makes a lot of sense to not have this road open.
Yeah.
When school buses are running.
June 11th, you said?
17th.
17th,
And that initial week, you're not going to see a whole lot.
yeah,
You're going to see lots of paint and cones and
yeah, okay. And luckily, that's where it was designated, the funds,
Yes.
and moved ahead, and we're
we
able.
filed our report yesterday, got a clean bill of health from the Treasury for ARPA, so we're done.
Good.
So to the extent that you've seen anybody on the street here this week, it was, we cameraed the sewers to make sure that we didn't have any broken sewer lines before we opened the road.
Good?
Good
Okay.
idea.
So
All
the
right.
idea is, if we found anything, I don't know, I don't think we're going to, but if we do, we won't pave the road until that is addressed as well. That would be a separate conversation with the commissioners.
Okay. And you said the
People
biggest.
hate that. Talk about what taxpayers hate. I realize nobody likes paying taxes. Nobody wants their tax bill to go up. But what really frosts people is you do a brand-new road, and 3 months later,
dig
you
it up
dig the
again.
whole thing up.
Oh, yeah.
And
Not-
all you did was complain about how much it costs the taxpayer, and the next thing you do is insult them by tearing it up.
Yeah.
I think we can be very proud of Gilboa Street and some of the other work we've done.
Yeah.
Thought about all that
Yeah.
and
Yes.
prevented that from happening.
Right,
Could I say something?
sure.
You know, I think we need to get out the message on how much a mile it really takes to pave a road, because everybody's going, well, they didn't pave the roads. Why don't they pave the roads? Well, if you knew how much, you'd know why.
Well, we need to improve everybody,
Yeah,
the town.
Right.
In my opinion, needs to improve its communication out there, because come on, people, you're not going to get this for nothing. Unfortunately, we would greatly like to, but everything has gone up. It's not going down.
I sometimes chafe at the idea, we're running it like a business. Okay, so if I'm running it like a business, I'm going to pass through all my costs to you, the consumer, all right? So, we don't. So municipal government doesn't pass all those costs.
Right.
You have staff here that decrease the cost of running the project by setting aside their work to do the project. And that
Yeah.
is not translated very easily to a private sector capitalist model. Anyway, we digress.
Yes.
So that's green communities. We cambered the sewers. Bob Sullivan cambered the sewers.
Good.
Bob's a smart guy and he looks to save money. The MVP grant of all the items on this list. So
Fire station, stormwater.
this is an example of trying to address a town need by finding a funding source that is driven by the ideology of other people. Am I being nice? Am I being diplomatic?
Yes, you're doing fine. Continue that route.
So we do have a drainage issue
Yes.
at the corner of Rydell and Main,
Yes.
and we really don't want the icky stuff from some of our operations, the salt barn, the highway barn, making its way into Riddlebrook or Centerville
Right.
Brook. And so there is a program, the Municipal Vulnerability Program. The town did the planning process to get ourselves eligible for what is called an action grant. So you identify priorities driven by climate change and climate events that would affect the town. And then, once the planning process is done, then you can go forward and address those issues with an action grant. And the action grants are big. There's real money here. So we have this drainage issue. The drainage issue flows out onto Main Street and makes Main a real mess. So if you notice,
Yeah.
the water pools up, there's a freeze-thaw cycles occur, and now we have alligator cracking and undermining of a lot of the road. I never thought I'd live to see the day, but, and this was something that Matt Benoit was working on, he got together with the Blackstone Valley Rivershed Coalition, or whatever they call themselves, something like that. They work on MVP grants. They came out here and they recommended paving,
Recommended what?
impervious surface.
Okay.
But I think the logic is impervious surface with proper catch basins, control the flow, keep it off the road, and then if you wanted to do something, if your MS4, because it would be, required you to address anything that you're catching in the catch basin, you would have to go forward and do that. So this grant would actually pave portions of the highway yard and catch the water in the catch basin. I think there were 2 or 3 installations, and clean out some of that, it's weird sort of culvert thing in front of the fire station, which at this point is a protected wetland because it's cat o' nine tails growing. I'm kidding. But it's clogged up with all the silt that comes off the highway barn site, gets trapped along the crease between Main Street and the lowest part of the grade from the fire station, and goes into that culvert. It's washing a lot of silt in there, so the effective rate of flow through the culvert is reduced considerably, which, from the point of view of flooding events, is negative. So if you go right after a thunderstorm, you have to have an ice cream cone. So you go to the ice cream lake, right after a thunderstorm, you'll see the water completely covers Rydell Road and Main at that corner. So that's what we're trying to address with an MVP grant. I'm very complimentary of Adam Furno got this finished. So after Matt left, Adam was able to complete the process, and we
Of the grant?
we filed timely for the grant. So I'll keep you informed on whether we get it.
Great. Okay, very good. Any questions?
What's the status of the dip in the landfill?
That's an article.
It's an article on town meeting
Okay,
to pay for the design work associated with addressing that.
how big of a dip is it?
I haven't been up there to look.
Okay.
I have this thing about landfills, because when I was the town administrator in Tiverton, we had the last active municipal landfill in southern New England.
Yeah.
In our town. Of course, that was my luck, right? I learned a ton about landfills. I had already known from
Yeah,
central landfill stuff I did in Rhode Island, but it's like Beetlejuice. I don't say the thing 3 times.
yeah,
I will not say that word again, because I don't want to summon the demons.
yeah.
Okay, we'll be there.
All that people really need to know, because it's all that we know at the moment, is that landfills over time, they subside.
Right,
So they kind
Yeah.
of collapse in. The central landfill in Rhode Island collapses 14 feet a year. It's
Oh.
fascinating. So the highest point is not Jeremoth Hill. The highest point in Rhode Island is the central landfill in Johnston.
wow,
But it kind of loses its oomph because it goes down 14 feet a year. This one is an old landfill.
Yeah.
It is partially capped,
yeah,
and so it's subsided probably 2 or 3 feet.
yeah,
The cap is still intact.
yeah,
So when the water tries to penetrate,
Right.
it's pooling. Instead of running off the edges, it's pooling. So we got to address that without busting the cap.
so you go in with a bulldozer.
And-
'Cause well, no,
Bulldozers
seriously.
and backhoes,
Well,
not okay.
No backhoes. Bulldozers, you don't have very much weight on them.
Yeah.
People don't realize that a bulldozer doesn't have much weight. So you never want to go on with anything rubber tired.
There's a design effort to kind of
Right.
put a crown back on
Right,
this thing.
so you push gravel on top of it.
Ray is up there.
And I know where there's gravel real close to it, too.
Oh,
I apologize, I got stuck on a meeting regarding tariffs this morning, and I couldn't get off, and so I apologize. I figured I'd jump on and see if you guys were still there.
we are. And thank you, Ray, for coming on.
But we're wrapping up.
And
right,
any
Madam Chair?
questions on anything? How long have you been on? Not
I
long.
literally just jumped on.
Okay. We're just about wrapping up because we got into a lot with the grammar school RFP, which isn't quite ready yet, and we'll be in touch getting back on that. And then the highway building project, and we're still getting information on that. Might have to have an extra meeting. One thing, the landfill, and I did
Yeah.
talk to Board of Health, Matt. It did not get its final cap
Okay,
because the state ran out of money.
okay.
And I told them that years ago, when it was supposed to. So the final cap was not put on the landfill. But you
So
can...
what that means is the cap you have was a cap that was designed to be an intermediate layer.
I think there was supposed to be, you need to maybe do a little research on this. I think there was either supposed to be 3 or 4.
Yeah, that would have been the doctrine at the time.
Yeah, and we did not get any money unless they got it later. But as far as I know, it
No,
was
so-
not
no,
finished.
yeah, that's the same information I got,
Okay,
was that it's a
Yep.
quote-unquote partial cap. But I wasn't told that it was the intermediate layer that was installed. A lot of times it's the same material. The membrane would be I'm just telling you what I
Yeah.
know, because this is what we were doing in Tiverton when we closed it.
right.
Started to close it. Is that the design was actually for 3 layers. There was one material, and there was 2 layers of a second material, different porosity. We'll see. We'll find out. But
Okay,
right now, we're just not going to damage it.
right. Good.
Number 1 priority.
Okay, and it is an
Keep the ticking
article.
time bomb ticking.
Yes.
not bombing.
And as I mentioned to them, the cap was not to prevent the
Outbreaks, no.
outbreaks into the water. And it wasn't that, is it going to leak?
Yeah,
It's when.
yeah.
Yep,
Okay. All right.
sounds about right.
Okay. We have minutes of March 19th, 2025. Anybody have any
I'm going to
problems?
excuse myself. 'cause
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your
I
info.
will scan and send this document that I circulated to Ray.
Yes.
I have a correction on the minutes. Under number 3A,
Yeah?
status of oil spill, Matt Wojcik discussed the conversation they had the MIA. It should be had with the, it's MIIA.
Maya. Oh,
MIIA.
Yeah.
So insert the word with, had with. And that's all I had.
anybody? Anything else?
Go ahead.
You good?
Yeah.
Carol?
Yep.
Okay, Ray? I don't know if you have your minutes with you, but anyhow.
I read them already online, so.
Yeah, me too. I make a motion to approve the March 19th, 2025 meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion made by Linda, seconded by Fred. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I think you have to take a roll call because we got
Yes.
somebody on that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
All in favor?
Linda Brown, aye.
Carol Gogolinsky, aye.
Fred Fontaine, aye.
Bob Wormy, aye.
Ray, do you approve the minutes, or? Muted.
Okay, now what do we do?
Sorry, I muted. Yeah, Ray Klotz, aye.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right.
Yes.
Upcoming meetings, again, May 21st, 2025, and June 2025. And please don't forget, you might get notified of another meeting that we have to have an extra. But we will get information regarding the project ahead of time. Okay, anything, any other items? Open session for topics not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of meeting. If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn? End
So
time.
moved.
Carol
Second.
Gogolinsky,
Second.
Bob Wormy, second. All in favor at, what time is it, guys? Up there?
11:22 or something like that.
Yeah. I got 11:25.
11:27.
11, okay.
The phone says 11:27.
11:27.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. And
Do we
happy
have to vote?
Easter. All in favor?
All in favor? Okay.
Aye. Aye.